Hey, everybody. My name is Nate Ernst, and I want to welcome you to the Full Crew episode 81. This is regarding UAS trends and technologies in energy and infrastructure operations. My name is Nate Ernst, and I am the Autonomy Global Energy Ambassador. To give a little bit of intro on myself, 17 years in UAS and remote sensing aviation technology, specifically for infrastructure. A lot of work in Group 1 through 4 UAS, as well as fixed wing and rotorcraft operations. I'm going to turn it over to our guests today on the episode. But before I do that, I just wanted to give a thank you to the Autonomy Global sponsors for this episode today. Broadcasting is provided by LiveView. Also Carasoft, Cape May County, Victus Technologies, and Echodyne. Now, the three guests on this episode today have went out into industry as experts of their own and have found three different articles of interest for today's episode as it relates to UAS and robotics operations for energy infrastructure operations. Before we jump into those articles, I'd like to give a quick introduction to the three different members on today's episodes, and I'm going to turn it over to Gabrielle. Please, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nate. I'm Gabrielle Wain. I lead regulatory policy and gov affairs at Skyways. We make highly automated cargo aircraft that fly hundreds of miles, carry meaningful payloads, and operate in conditions that a lot of drones can't, particularly offshore. We started out operating for the Navy, and our aircraft is now moving parts around to offshore wind farms in the Baltic, flying medical supplies across the Okinawa Islands with ANA, and inspecting infrastructure that might require a crewed helicopter today.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Julien.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julien DuPont. I'm the partnership manager for the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition that's headquartered out of Houston, Texas. I have a background in hands-on construction and also offshore oil and gas exploration and production. And I, for the last 10 years, have been working with an Energy Drone Robotics Coalition on their annual gathering and community.
Thanks for being here, Julien. Appreciate it. And Mr. David.
G'day, everybody. David Cole, co-founder, CEO of FlyFreely. So my background is started in the drone industry in around 2013 as a drone service provider in Australia. We had the challenge of sort of managing our own operations and compliance. So we built our own software platform to do that starting in about 2018. So we've been doing that since then. And prior to all of that, I was 10 years in mining and resources as a mechanical engineer. So can give a few different points of view on different aspects of the industry.
Thank you, David. And Gabrielle and Julien, thank you very much for your intros as well. So we're going to jump over to some articles. And as I mentioned, each of you have went out and perused recent news sources and industry trends to find articles of interest as it relates to energy operations and UAS. David, we're going to choose your article first, if that's okay. The name of your article is The Top 10 AI Trends Reshaping Oil and Gas Operations for 2026 and 2027. I'm going to hand it over to you if you could summarize this article for us and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah, so this is a really interesting one, how it's being put together. So this article is actually a derivation of an AI in energy conference, and they basically threw all the conversations that happened at that conference together to sort of synthesize what everyone was talking about. So there is some basis to this coming from actual people doing things in the field. And you know, while it's the top 10 things, really you can group those into three categories. You know, the people, process, and technology. Those sort of staples of sort of adopting any new technology. And so starting on the technology side, you know, what it's really talking about is how things are now moving from a little bit of experimentation now into production. So moving outside of, safe sort of confines into actual real world examples. And I think one of the most interesting ones in this is around the predictive maintenance side of things. So, that's been a push for a long time in industry, is moving towards more predictive maintenance. And what's really interesting is the AI has now got enough information that it's basically saying, yeah, I can predict things, but really I'm seeing patterns here that are occurring, and I can actually just prescribe you the maintenance regime based on all the patterns I've seen previously. So it's now moving towards back to sort of a prescriptive maintenance, but with actions attached to it. So the AI is actively suggesting what the prescriptive maintenance actions should actually be, and then going and doing that. So that was, I think, really interesting. The second part on the process side is really, I think what we all sort of understand with AI is, how do you trust that, right? So you now got this AI doing things. How do you trust it? So that's a huge area around the governance of AI, and how the data that feeds into that actually, will determine success or failure on that. And then finally, what we all know when it comes to any new technology or any change is the people. This relies on adoption from people at the front line to not only adopt it, but to train it, to ensure that it's doing the right things. And so you're having to drive that engagement across workforce is the other sort of emerging topic that's coming out. And I'm sure, we can all talk about it, what's happening in our businesses. I know we certainly have the similar challenge of, getting people to at least play with these tools and try to use them.
Interesting, looking at some of these trends. Item number 2, the rise of proof of concept graveyards. Most AI pilots fail to deliver operational value, and leaders are now prioritizing scalability before experimentation. I know we have to move on to the next article, but something interesting to think about. Yeah, is that a result of understanding AI and how it works the hard way? Or is that kind of a carryover lesson from understanding how to use UAS back in 2013, when UAS commercially was a new thing, right? And all of the different things that
took place. The same patterns, right? The same patterns, different technology.
Really interesting. Very interesting. So, David, you were talking about the proof of concept graveyards, and Gabrielle and Julien, I know you guys have been around the industry a while too. Back in the beginning, 2012, 2013-ish, right? The time frame kind of is gray, right? But all these commercial entities wanted to use mainly SUAS first, right? And start doing proof of concepts. And a lot of hard lessons were learned about scalability, which aircraft work, which don't, et cetera, maybe over expectations. And there was a lot of painful lessons learned. Do you see a proof of concept graveyard with AI adoption as well? And Gabrielle, I'll go to you first.
That's so interesting with AI adoption. I don't know. I feel like the proof of concept thing, I come from the regulatory world. So a lot of the proof of concepts, I feel like, were to try and primarily unblock the regulatory challenges. And they kind of put the economic piece second. And then it was like, okay, we unblocked the regulatory, but this, the kind of scalability part of it just wasn't really there. I also, just other context, I used to work for a detect and avoid manufacturer. So a lot of the beyond line of sight flight and those kinds of use cases. I mean, enough to say, I saw a lot of proof of concept graveyards. The thing that I found was really just kind of, as you were talking about predictive maintenance, it was kind of making me think. I'm quite curious about how AI might end up being applied to, in a kind of similar way to safety management systems, and be able to help organizations surface some of that data. But yeah, exactly to your point, I think there's there's a massive learning curve for the people that deploy AI, and even just realizing what you can apply it to is a constant learning curve, right? So that's sort of what was coming to mind as you were talking.
Julien, good.
Or no, in regards to the proof of concept AI graveyard, I definitely see a big one because it just seems like with the technology of AI being so new, everybody is just, I mean, they're tacking AI onto everything. I see it from, marketing and sales point. It's like, oh, well, AI is going to do that. It's like the catch-all for everything. It's like, I go to McDonald's, I'm going to have an AI burger. It's like, so yeah, there's going to be definitely a lot of implementation and failure that's going to end up, and it's kind of really sifting through and figuring out what are the applications and use cases that are going to succeed, and more often than not, there's going to be a hell of a lot more that are going to fail and end up in the graveyard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I keep gravitating towards trend number 2, just the proof of concept graveyard. I mean, there's 10 really good ones here. But it's really interesting to watch a lot of these utilities, quote unquote, adopt AI full on, and they're hitting the gas pedal all the way to the fire. And then 3 months into it, hey, let's let off the gas pedal and maybe hit the brakes a little bit. We're not really sure what's going on. But you know what? That's a soliloquy for the entire society, right? It's for the entire world as we adopt AI. Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Gabrielle, I think we'll jump over to your article, if that's okay. And so you chose an article from a company called Wilson Sons, and they are revolutionizing offshore logistics with one of the biggest buzzwords in the UAS industry, drone delivery, right? So if you could tell us, what's this all about? What's going on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it seems like I feel like the proof of concept is a great segue. So I picked this one, I think, because it's a good example of where offshore energy, and the use case is, to some extent, has already unblocked, but there's definitely more to do. For context, I didn't know, but Wilson Sons is nearly 200-year-old Brazilian port and maritime logistics operator. They are an incumbent, and they've now got the 2 Brazilian regulators, ANAC and DECIA, to sign off on these commercial drone deliveries between a Rio offshore support base and platform supply vessels in Guanabara Bay. So they're delivering, I think it's documents or something, very small payloads, 5 kilo payloads, 8 kilometers each way, fairly short flights. But the story reminded me of some of the demand that, at Skyways we're seeing for these offshore operations, but we're getting the demand on much greater distances. And the key question around that for us is how operators can extend authorizations beyond 12 nautical miles offshore, where those operations are governed by ICAO, not the National Aviation Authority. And it seems that getting out to these much deeper water assets is where there's a lot of big unlocks. So for those, maybe everybody's knows this already, David's nodding, but the 12 nautical mile boundary is the limit of a country's territorial sea under international law. And inside it, you're operating in this clearly defined national airspace, but outside of it, you're in this completely different regulatory regime. And in the US specifically, where we're operating, that's where the rules kind of become murky in terms of how you get authorized. The FAA is working on, but hasn't fully established yet, a clean pathway for drone ops that go beyond 12 nautical miles to these US-owned offshore assets. There's an executive order that's trying to push them to create this pathway, and I can see them working hard to do it. But for offshore oil and gas, the wind farms that are kind of being developed and looking at new locations to be developed, that's where we're seeing a huge amount of opportunity. And so I just brought this article to the group because I thought it was pretty transformational if we're able to unblock that 12 nautical mile authorization.
So in this article, I think there's an interesting distinction here, and it's simply an assumption based off the text it says, right? Which means it could be totally wrong. But, when we start talking about offshore logistics, right, we have ship to shore, shore to ship to ship. This is a little bit different. This is almost the way I read it, essentially ship to sea, right? Because we're offshore base, right? So it's in the water. So it's a completely whole different variable to tongue twist your twist your tongue even further with all these different terms. But the way I understand this, the Rio offshore support base is not on land, right? It's in the water somewhere, stationary. And then there's a ship within some proximity of it by which the UAS is delivering supplies between those two. Is that correct?
I mean, I think so, but you have about as much background on the article that I do. I thought it was interesting, though.
Yeah.
You need to Google Rio offshore. Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is Rio offshore?
So, Gabrielle, I know you do a lot of work in the regulatory stuff, especially with offshore. This may be an interesting, well, not loophole, but interesting concept of operations by which it may be more feasible to mitigate the 12-mile offshore airspace limit, right? Especially if that offshore base is 12 nautical miles offshore.
Yeah, I wish. What we found is that you still have to navigate those rules. You're operating under somebody's rules always, right. And either it's the National Aviation Authority or it's ICAO. But I also went down that path of like, well, if we're just never touching the land, could
yeah.
work? But yeah, there's always some kind of authorization that you need to, as far as I understand it. If others have it different information, I'm all ears.
Yeah. No, I mean, myself, when I did some work in this years ago, and we were able to define a CONOPS by which we could take off inside the controlled airspace. But once you left the boundary and went into ICAO, there was no way to get back in. So I have not worked there in a few years, but it was very interesting. Julien, what does this article read to you? What types of any interesting points come out of this?
I think in regards to having a solution provider of a cargo drone like Skyways, it just kind of shows you that the solutions are not always engineering or logistics. It's regulatory, because they have the ability to do that. It's just with this 12-mile cap. I mean, Gulf of Mexico or North Seas further than 12 miles out from inland, because I mean, when you're out working offshore, time is money, and if you need something hot shotted out there, a solution like a cargo drone it makes a hell of a lot more sense than waiting for the Bell helicopter Sikorsky to fly out there, or waiting, or even worse, waiting for a tool boat to come on in. So it just kind of shows you what regulations are being able to work within those or change them, or the issue. It's not the solution. The solution's already there.
Yeah, for sure. David, I know it's been a few years, but can you put on your drone service provider hat again? What does this CONOP look like to you? Is this something you find interesting? And maybe, I know we're reading into this without true facts and just assuming, but this CONOP of, let's call it sea to ship and ship to sea.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Apart from the some interesting technical challenges as well. Particularly if you've got both your home and delivery point are potentially moving and not fully fixed. That always brings lots of interesting challenges. And then on the regulatory side is always the challenge. I think the good thing about this article and is the work that has been done previously in Singapore, the work Skyways has been doing. So there's regulators out there that are willing to give these concepts, a go, right? And I've seen Brazil done several innovative things. They've been quite good from what I can see in terms of their approach, and actually coming up with like a type certification process for drones. That's a little bit limited, but there's a process there to do that, which I found quite interesting. And yeah, it's then the again, we took proof of concept. It's then going to commercial. What's the what's the tipping point there for a commercial? Do you need a certain number of boats in that sort of area per year to make that work? That would be another interesting thing to kind of understand as well, where that sort of tipping point occurs.
Sure, absolutely. All right, Julien, last but not least, we're going to pull up your article. You picked a article titled "Robotic Solutions Are the Future of Industrial Surface Maintenance." Can you give us a rundown on what this article is all about?
Certainly. I really like this article in regards to the fact that it kind of exemplifies that, when we started our Energy Drone Robotics Coalition, most of the solutions were all drone based. It's a robot, but it's flying, right? And most of them were inspection related. This article by Q Layers, which is actually a robotics coding company out of Holland, that it's showing that now we're getting the point that we have bots that are not just inspecting, but they can do stuff. They can paint, right? And so this article kind of lays out the importance of, in the steps, I guess you'd say, in what the coding robot is able to do. Because in oil and gas, as you guys know, it's 365-day a year job is either you're prepping surface to paint it or you're painting it. And when you're done, you're starting all over again, because we're talking about offshore oil rigs, we're talking about ships, petrochemical plants that are in highly corrosive environments that need to be coated all the time to keep things up and running. So once again, traditionally, though, the bot has the ability to crawl up tanks and other metal surfaces and inspect. And that's where the data collection, the reality capture occurs. So they're able to make these digital twins that then they're able to utilize for predictive maintenance, that also then is able to interface with your asset lifecycle management to overall run the asset and be able to keep tabs of it and maintain it. Some of the biggest benefits, obviously, very dangerous environments that these bots are working in. It's rainy, it's dangerous, so you're getting the human out of the process, and it's faster. Another one of the things that the article brings up is regards to coding. When you have a bot that's essentially rolling the paint on the surface, it's a lot different than if you were spraying, because when you're spraying, you're losing over 50% of the product that's going ahead and protecting the surface. So that's another aspect of it. You're not having to build scaffold to utilize this bot, or God forbid, have somebody rappel, which in the past they've had people doing that. What's kind of cool, though, because I know this is more of a drone crowd, is that though, the drones are getting in there now, you've got like a Skygauge and a Valero that are not only, inspecting and physically touching the asset. There's new attachment like that Monty Power provides, which is actually grinding. So they're able to go up at heights, prep an area, and then they can come back. You've got like a drone, a Pelex, which is a spray painting drone, or it's a surface prep drone. So there's a lot of drones and robots out there that can do these not only an inspection, but the maintenance and the repair of the asset. So that's kind of really it in the overall takeaway is that utilizing these bots and drones safer, faster, cheaper, and they're getting to the point that ultimately they're going to be running pretty much autonomously, and they're once again going to be able to tie into the overall asset lifecycle management platforms out there that are, over the entire enterprise.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of comments on this article, all good ones. I think it's a fantastic article, and I guess I'll keep my comments relatively short because I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts as well. I find it so encouraging to see an article written like this for a few reasons. I'm going to go back to the UAS stuff, and we'll tie it back into the robotics. I think that the adoption of UAS in the beginning did not account for fully burdened cost savings. Right? There was this whole idea and this whole narrative pushed by industry that these are the future and UAS is cheaper. Most of the time on a direct CapEx to CapEx, apples to apples comparison, probably not. But the fully burdened cost, and Julien, you just talked about it, hazardous labor hours or savings on supplies for operations, or efficiency's sake, direct time spraying that boat hull versus 25 people with paintbrushes or spray guns, right? And so if you look at this, the UAS industry and the robotics industry, the apples to apples direct CapEx between traditional labor and robotics or UAS, oftentimes at scale, is far more expensive on the robotics or UAS side until you account for OPEX, fully burning cost, and reduction of hazardous labor safety, hazardous labor hours, right? And so to see an article written like that to say this is the future, just my 2 cents, yeah, it is the future, but not because it's directly cheaper than the alternative or incumbent method, but because at a fully burdened operational scale, it makes the most sense. Gabrielle, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was just mulling on kind of that same thing of, where, and the context I have is obviously like Skyways and the sort of demand that we see, but really looking at, okay, we've got a cargo delivery drone, but that could also carry a heavy sensor and perform inspection missions as well as or instead of whatever cargo delivery mission you're looking at. I think it's kind of fascinating once at least the tech is built and it's starting to be operationalized, like all of these different use cases and uses for that aircraft or whatever robot. Side point, I tell my kids that I work with flying robots, but I think they're going to be stoked that there's like 8 robots now. But yeah, I think just I really enjoyed reading the article because it was telling me all of these new things that I didn't realize robots were doing. And I think there's something, complementary about being able to have drones like Skyways coming in and bringing like parts and resupply, all being used to complement some kind of inspection mission with all of these other things that, everything just helps bring down that those hazardous jobs. And that really, I mean, I'm broad brushing here, but, I would rather people not be doing, right? Things that are dangerous. If there's a way to take the person out of that, let's try that.
Yeah. David, we've had this conversation a lot in many different ways, shapes, and forms over the past, I guess, couple of years now. Any additional thoughts here on this article?
Yeah, coming back to what you're saying on the economics, and just sort of a parallel sort of application here. One of the big areas that's kind of growing at the moment with UAS is washing buildings, right? With UAS. And what we're hearing from our customers who are in that space, when they say to the building owners, "Hey, we just eliminate people working at heights," they're like, "Sign me up," right? They can't find the people to do it. It's actually becoming really, really challenging. And then obviously the risks and insurance premiums and all those things. So it's almost cost goes out the window in certain applications, not completely, but and this is potentially another use case, right? Where even if the robots are more expensive, but when you take into account those other factors that, the operational people who have got to schedule these things are like, I can't have my boat sitting there for 6 months because we can't find anybody. We got to get it done now, and that cost of it sitting there will outstrip everything. So yeah, again, it's really encouraging that these things are starting to now emerge and physically do things. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So I could talk about this one all day long, but I have to make a comment on what you just said, because you kind of led into my next most pressing comment about this particular article. So OPEX, CAPEX, direct versus fully burdened, right? And the different parities between those. And the harsh realities that a lot of energy companies and really the entire industry figured out the hard way, right? But we learned, right? There are hard lessons to learn. And now we have a little bit of a broader lens on the true value proposition of UAS, not just how much it costs to buy one. But then you talk about, having a piece of equipment on the shelf that you can't use because it's so expensive. Well, I think it's also a cultural shift, right? And let's take the technology, the investment, the new adoption out of it for a second. Culturally, as an energy company in this case, we kind of have to change. If I was an energy company, I have to change my mindset, right? The idea of siloed budgets and one department using one tool for one thing, and then the second department using that same tool for something totally different the very next day, right? This whole idea of siloed budgets and siloed use cases for siloed departments, siloed should be a banned word, in my opinion, at an energy. No more silos, right? And so if you can justify the reduction in hazardous labor hours, the different depreciation schedule on that type of equipment investment, and you're cross-utilizing data deliverables or tasks by this technology across multiple departments, I'm willing to bet 95% of the time that model gets you a significantly cheaper, fully burdened price. But that's a cultural shift, not a technology adoption.
Yeah. And we see a lot, even some of the high performing drones, they're quite expensive, the capabilities. But, if there was to share them across companies or departments, and then everyone can get a piece of it and save, potentially a lot by, just engaging and sharing. But corporate and budgets, it's where do the budgets sit?
Where do the budgets sit, and what is the cross utilization of those budgets? And if the answer is zero, I don't know if you're going to have a wonderful time adopting that very expensive piece of technology. Right? So anyway, that's my 2 cents there, and I certainly appreciate your guys' comments as well. If there's no more comments on any of these articles, well, let me open it up to the floor. Any other comments or closing thoughts?
I had one just that came to mind about sort of the first and this last article. As we were talking, it just made me realize, and you talking about, silos, I think what really helps with that, it's kind of linked to that AI piece of people can't really conceptualize what you could do with it until, those use cases or opportunities and stories about how, you can go from one thing to the other, flying robots to post and all of those different things that you could be used for. And I think from Skyways' point of view, it's we're still learning new use cases for that aircraft, right? There's a lot of examples, but I'm sure that not all of them have been surfaced, but I think it comes back to the importance of articulating what using that kind of technology can do and the impact it can have on people and on how things are done, rather than just talking about, okay, this is an aircraft that can go really far and can carry heavy stuff, like that kind of thing. And I think it's the same for AI. It's like, I feel like I'm realizing new things to use AI for every day in my day job, and I'm sure everybody else is going through that same learning curve. So that was one final reflection from me that came up as you were talking.
Appreciate it. Julien, David, any closing thoughts, or did you get to express them all?
I was just going to say, we're going to have the flying drone delivering the crawling drone, which then uses AI to make decisions as it's doing its job. There we go. We've tied it all together.
Yeah, I'd like to say what you were talking about in terms of culture. I think the talk that we had about the industrial surface maintenance and that type of bot, it's more palatable in adoption in regards to like a biped that's going to come in and work there, because when you've got a robot that can go inside of a petrochem tank that was once filled with xylene to clean the sludge up at the bottom of that tank. The robot is going to do that job every day. The person is not. So I think, just like the adoption of AI, people are fearing it's going to take their job. These are jobs that nobody wants. So it's be saving money and saving lives. So I think that those type of adoptions are going to be embraced.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up, I want to go around the horn and tell us, and for the rest of the viewers on the episode, what are you guys up to in the next couple of weeks? What's most pressing for you guys, and how can industry get in touch with you? And David, I'll go first.
Yeah, I'll be in Houston next week for Energy Drones and Robotics. Looking forward to it. Otherwise, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out.
Sure, absolutely. And Julien?
Next week, much like David, I will be June 22nd through 24th in Houston, Texas at the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition Summit. It's our 10th annual event. It's going to be our biggest ever. And oh, by the way, the World Cup games are going on there too. So
only $4,000 a ticket.
Yeah, but you could. But it's going to be a great time, and looking forward to seeing everyone there. And edrcoalition.com is our web address.
Thank you. And Gabrielle, how about you? Where are you going the next couple of days, weeks?
Next week, I'm actually going to be in DC. But also I am supporting the Skyways team on getting various different approvals for our version 3 aircraft. So working hard on that. I know the whole team is as well. And if you want to get in touch with me, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah, and then as for myself, I will be joining David and Julien in Houston next week for the 10th annual EDRC Summit. Looking forward to seeing you guys. And Gabrielle, looking forward to connecting with you sometime in the future. If you want to get in touch with me, you can go to tacteamgroup.com or LinkedIn. You can find me there as well. I think, let me check the clock here. Yeah, we are out of time. So we will go ahead and conclude this episode. Before we go, I wanted to once again thank the sponsors for this episode. As mentioned previously, I want to thank LiveView for the broadcasting capability of this episode. Carasoft, Cape May County, Victus Technologies, and Echodyne. And I believe that the next show, let's see if that pops up. All right, I want to thank everybody for attending the episode today. Tomorrow's episode is on Dawn of Autonomy. and Autonomy Global, we are out here. Thank you.